Hey guys, welcome back to Eric's Hobby Workshop. In this episode, we'll be building an awesome medieval fantasy marketplace. Let's get to it. Alright, so you guys know me as a Warhammer guy, mostly doing Necromunda stuff, 40k stuff, but I just bought this. This is a D&D starter set. I'm taking the plunge into the D&D universe, and I will be DMing too for my first time, which is awesome. Kind of diving right into the deep end. I can hear you guys going, what? You're DMing for the first time that you're playing? But you know what? My players aren't very experienced either, so I'm sure they won't notice my complete lack of knowing what I'm doing. Should be fine. You might notice that I changed the look up a little bit. I heard a rumor about butter. I won't spread it. I heard a rumor that blondes have more fun, and I can confirm this is true. No, I just really wanted to look like the first guy that Bruce Willis kills in Die Hard. Really badly, I wanted to cosplay as that guy like permanently. No, but seriously, I've been reading Devastation of Baal by Guy Haley. Totally kick-ass book. And as you may know, the Blood Angels are mostly blonde, owing to the gene seed of their Primarch Sanguinius. So in that vein that I thought, yeah, it'd be cool to have sort of a cartoonishly blonde hair for a little bit. I'm also just famously susceptible to peer pressure. And all my brother's friends had blonde hair. So yeah. But that's neither here nor there. Alright, without further ado, let's get into this build. Okay, let's jump right into building the basic market stall structures. I used some coffee stir sticks and little round dowels from the dollar store, and I'm starting here by just building the back panel. Once I have that done, I make something similar with the front panel, with just one coffee stir stick, and then a roof that's slightly wider, and that allows me to assemble them in this way here, making a nice basic stand. And really it's pretty simple, there's nothing more to it than that. The key is the detailing. And while I'm working on this, my brother's building a nice big one, and you'll see how that comes into play later. So I add some white glue to some water to do the awnings and tarps that cover some of my other designs. As you can see behind there, I have one that needs covering of cloth. So I mix up that glue and water, put in that piece of paper towel, and I drape it over the top gently, pinching it until it's the shape that I like. I do that on all three of the designs that need a cloth awning. I decided to make them in various shapes and sizes just to get a little bit more of a cosmopolitan look and a little bit less of a uniform look. So if I wanted to add different things later, it would help to unify it just because of the lack of variety already. So as you can see, this one has more of a gabled roof type shape, but it still looks great once you add the cloth. A little note here about the type of paper towel I used. I don't think it was ideal. I think you can find ones with less texture than the ones I used, but it's not the end of the world. So I hit those with some brown spray paint. This is the obligatory reminder to wear a mask. If you look at the safety data sheets for spray paint, it's pretty bad, so always wear a mask. Then I dry brush with some tan paint to pick out some of the details. And I come back in with some off-white, some bright red, and some blue paint to pick out some nice colors on these awnings. As you can see, there's a strong texture, but that's fine. Next I come in with some yellow and green, alternating panels here to get a nice colorful roof for this one. Next I use some epoxy. Oops, I dropped it. Okay, mash that epoxy up. This is green stuff if you've ever heard of it. 2-part epoxy putty. And I'm going to roll that into a nice long snake and then cut that into little tiny pillow shapes. As you can see, I've built a little box out of some more coffee stir sticks, and then I take these little pillow shapes and I roll them all up into tiny little balls. They end up kind of regular, but that's fine because I'm making potatoes. You know, boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Now hold it right there because I can already hear the distinctive crackling sound of Cheeto encrusted fingers unfurling to interject and say that I've made a terrible mistake because potatoes didn't exist in medieval Europe. And I just want to say that this is not medieval Europe. I know that, I've thought about that, but this is the Warhammer world this is going to be taking place in for the most part. And the new world has been explored by Estalians and Norse, etc., and is part of the known cosmopolitan world. And who wants a fantasy setting without potatoes, realistically? So potatoes they are. Next I'm going to take some peppercorns, just your normal black peppercorns, and glue them in alongside, and when those are painted up, they're going to be some really great heads of cabbage or lettuce. I'm pretty pleased with that trick, to be honest, because I didn't want to have to sculpt everything out of putty, but I will sculpt some carrots. So I start by making a bunch of pointy little sticks, similar to a carrot shape, I suppose. And then I'm going to make a basket here, and the way to make a basket is to cut a piece of a thicker dowel and just wrap some excess putty around it. Baskets, bags, sacks, they're all super easy to make with your excess putty, and it really adds some extra detail. So I put a bead of white glue in there, and then I sprinkle a little bit of couscous. And if you're wondering, no, I did absolutely nothing to prepare all these food products that I'm using for the tabletop, other than just gluing and painting them, which I think will be fine. You know, if I come in one day to my Warhammer collection and there's a fat-bellied mouse feasting on all my little terrain pieces, well then whatever, it's a great story, okay? But no, I didn't do anything special. So here's a little box I made for some groceries that I'm going to put my carrots in. I add a little folded piece of green stuff to the back of a bunch of spikes to make the sort of green part on the back of the carrots. And then I lay them into that box there as best I can. I find green stuff incredibly tricky to work with. It's so sticky. And as you can see, I'm using a totally inadequate tool. I'm using just a splintered piece of coffee stir stick, but that's how I roll. I like to strike when the inspiration's hot. And so for the bottom again, I'm putting some peppercorns. And that's gonna look really good when painted. I got a feeling about it. So next I'm gonna make some small tables. That wider bit that the table is made out of is just a bigger tongue depressor popsicle stick type thing. So these things are dirt cheap at a dollar store, and it's a really quick and easy way to make some fun fantasy furniture. And I start by adding a bunch of swords from my bits box. From left to right here, we've got a dirk, a short sword, a Zweihander or a great sword, a falchion, the one with one blade there, and then a stiletto on the far right. And then I'm also going to add some helmets here. These are a mixture of Bretonnian bits, Empire bits, and Perry Miniatures bits. And just a quick note on historical accuracy. These are from a variety of time periods, but that's true within the Warhammer world as well. In the Warhammer world, the Kingdom of Bretonnia is about 200 years behind the Empire, but they did a pretty good job of making it make sense in the lore. They have a sense of chivalry that's actually tied to real life magical benefit, so they don't keep up to date with technology at the risk of being unchivalrous, which kind of works. So next I'm making a little potion with a little bit of toothpick and some more epoxy putty. And once I have that in an approximately symmetrical shape, I'll stick it down on the top of this little shelf I built and let those dry. Next I'm going to make a little cobbler. And I have all these extra goblin legs from the kit that comes with wolf rider legs as well. So I cut their little shoes off, and I glue them to a table here with a little pouch and hammer from the Bretonnian Archer's kit. And then I'm going to take a little bit of cardboard and cut some squares of leather. And I'm going to cut a little sole shaped out so it looks like the sole of a shoe is in the midst of repairs here. And that's a little cobbler's table, nice and simple. A really fun way to use old bits you thought you might never use, like a whole ton of goblin legs. Next, using some super glue, I'm going to glue my potions into place on my shelf. You can see I also added a little skull and an hourglass just for some more detail. Now I'm making some tiny books using little sandwiches of cardboard. These are kind of fun to make, but they're also kind of a real pain. But that's cool. It's cool to try new things. So I make a nice stack of books that showcases the shape of them. And there we have it. We have a big pile of bits ready for some paint. So I take them outside and give them a little priming. And then I come in with some brown to paint the tables. And I pick out all the little details with what I would say is an okay paint job. Sometimes it's better to have more stuff with an okay paint job than just a few things pointed to a golden demon standard. And you might not agree with that, but that's my philosophy, and that's how I make the world feel vast and deep, is little compromises in quality here and there can actually be your best friend. So as I paint these weapons, you see it's really starting to come to life, and I'm really pleased with how this is looking. I'm adding some details with gold, getting these things ready. I use several different shades of brown on my cobbler's table, and then I use some nice fresh vibrant colors for my produce. These ones I'm going to make purple cabbages, and I'll make the other ones green cabbages for a little bit of variation, so it looks like there's more than just a few products in the marketplace. I do a nice golden brown for those potatoes, and then some green for those cabbages or lettuces. And I really like the way that peppercorn texture works for that. Next I use some oranges and reds for some spices, and a bunch of different colors for my potion pots. So here I am painting up some shields to go in the back of the armory sort of building. And for this one I'm doing a red salter, which is a diagonal X on black. And the reason I'm doing that is a shout out to the Blood Angels Death Company. And rather than having like a Space Marine head on the table or something that would just be anachronistic, this is a nod that doesn't actually break the world. So those are the type of homages I'm interested in. Hey, you guys want to see me skateboard a little bit?
Tell me to film that.
Still got it. Anyways, back to the crafting. A nice chevron on yellow should look good. And then for this one, this heraldic charge is called a maunch. I love this thing. It's so silly. It's like a lady's sleeve. A pointy, drooping lady's sleeve. What a cool design. So I glue those all onto the back panel, and then I'm going to glue my tables to it as well. So yeah, I mean, heraldry is a really fun thing. If you gotta, you know what? You guys gotta look up, I can't say it here, maybe, but look up the Dodge family, like Dodge cars. Look up the Dodge family crest. Their charge is the funniest thing ever, and I'm gonna have to include that at some point on somebody. But go Google the Dodge family crest. You'll enjoy this. The other cool thing about heraldry is you can anthropomorphize the heraldic charges into the personalities of the people wearing it. And you know what is the most famous for doing this is the Game of Thrones TV show and the Song of Ice and Fire books. Like, the Lannisters are always calling themselves lions because they've got the lion on their crest, and the House Stark is always talking about the pack and using wolfish metaphors and things like that as their sort of guiding principles. And that stuff's a lot of fun, so it can help you to make up your own characters too if you just start with their color scheme and her heraldry, and then you can sort of build off that. It's kind of really cool. It's a cool way to approach things. So try that one out. Next I'm going to paint up some NPCs or townsfolk for my market to give it that nice teeming busy feel and to add some splashes of color. These are from Perry Miniatures, which is a company run by Alan and Michael Perry, who sculpted a lot of my favorite miniatures back in the 5th edition era. So they really match the old Warhammer aesthetic that I really like, and I was able to add some nice splashes of color to some of these really characterful sculpts. I also really like how their personalities just jump out and give me ideas on what they could be doing or what their characters might be like as I prepare for a D&D campaign. There's something about the act of getting these NPCs ready for the table that starts my brain really turning about coming up with D&D adventures and quests. Like, for example, when I see this little guy with his bright red hood and his green shirt, his nonchalant strolling, I can think of a million things that he might be going to do. And I can start to think about his personality just based on his body language. And it helps me to flesh him into a fully formed character, which will help me in turn to create adventures for my players. In that same vein, just taking one of these NPCs and putting them behind the counter of a stall, and all of a sudden you've imbued them with even more story. Now all of a sudden they're a tradesperson. Half of the character building and backstory writes itself for you if you just do a little bit of crafting and then juxtapose your elements. And I find that a really cool way to spark inspiration for narratives and stories. And hopefully you guys do too. I also think there's something to be said for the way that my tastes have evolved as I've gotten older. When I started this hobby when I was about 10 years old, the things that appealed to me the most were the terrifying warriors and armor and dragons and things like that, and I think that's fairly normal. And the older I've gotten, first of all, I really didn't like the Empire back then. I thought they were so vanilla and they were so boring and so unremarkable. And as I've grown older, my tastes have really changed on that, and now I really love the human factions. Putting your warriors in these mundane scenes can recontextualize them and make them seem all the more formidable based on the contrast with the mundane. So, hope you guys liked that video. If you did, please check out my Patreon, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time on Eric's Hobby Workshop.